Today, I wanted to talk about mainly mental toughness and how to develop that. Before we get into that, if you don't mind just giving a little background about yourself so people know who you are.
Sure. Yep. Zach Even-Esh, strength and sport performance coach. So I'm here at Middletown High School South. This is the end of my second year here, and that's a pretty new or these are new positions to have full-time strength coaches at the high school level, at least in New Jersey. Places like South Carolina, Texas, Georgia, they've been ahead of the curve for a while. And I got into this field around 2002, but I started coaching. 2002 is when I'd say I really got into this full time. I started coaching in 1995 and been training since 1989. So in those 32 years, this is actually June. I started lifting weights in June of 1989. So here we are in June of 2021. It's like call it like my lifting anniversary. So, man, in those 32 years, of course, I've seen a lot of changes in training, changes in what the way information is available to you. And I've seen, of course, a ton of squats. I've seen what works, I've seen what doesn't work. So I have a unique coach's eye, so to speak.
Okay. So before you get into exactly how to develop mental toughness, I want to ask, how would you define it?
It's a tough question. Mental toughness has been a phrase that has been thrown around quite a lot. And then Angela Duckworth, who's a professor at UPenn, she wrote a book called Grit. And I think that her definition, not exactly, is like the ability to maintain passion and perseverance for a long-term goal or outcome without letting things slow you down. So mental toughness is staying power, or if we were to like trickle it down to the real world, is how do you react when the chips are down, when things are not in your favor? Do you fold? Do you give up? Do you quit? And so I always use a phrase like convenience and excellence are rarely ever found on the same road. So some people will be like, all right, I'll train. Oh, but I don't like to go there. It's 30 minutes away. Oh, it's not convenient. How dedicated and commit, how much grit do you have? As soon as, oh, it's too late, I can't do that. Or, oh, it's $50 more than the other guy, I can't do that. And so toughness is staying power and being able to turn obstacles into opportunity, to turn the struggle into strength, to turn the tragedy into triumph. And it's mental, because your mind will drive your body. And I've been around many athletes who could lift the most weights in the gym, in the weight room, but in sport or in life, they struggle with that carryover. And so, ironically, this obviously means a lot to me. I call my podcast the Strong Life Podcast, and it's focused and centered on what can you take from the weight room and apply it to your life. And probably must have been, I think it was 2012. I did a gathering, an underground strength conference, and the Ultimate Warrior spoke. And I remember he said, it's easy to be a badass under a barbell. He's like, but how about you be a badass in your life? Because that is a disconnect you don't want. You don't want that disconnect of being the guy that could lift the most. You could crush it in the gym and in the weight room, but then your life is in shambles. You want to take the lessons, the discipline, the toughness you have in the weight room and apply it to your life. And I'm still trying to figure out why it works for some people and why it doesn't. Sometimes, you know, um, humans and technology are the two most unstable things, I say. So it could be quite tricky. And I'll tell you what else, it takes time to develop that grit. It's not, some people have it. I believe everybody can develop it, but you have to really want it. And some people don't care. Some people don't want to be uncomfortable. And so they just, it's of no interest to them. And look, even this, Joe, like, so here I am at a high school. The training for the athletes is free, but they still will pay, or their parents will pay to go to a private coach. Then the kid will come back and he's squatting halfway, or he's dumbbell benching with his head off the bench and bad technique. And I start saying, like, why do they maybe not like coming here? I'll tell you why. Because I make them squat all the way down and go lighter. That is actually harder than squatting heavy and doing it wrong. And so I coach them hard. And some people don't like that. And so they'd rather go somewhere else where maybe the coach that they go to doesn't even know what the right way is. And so it's easier for them. And you want to seek out hard things, because that's the stuff that makes you better. Easy shit that doesn't challenge you, it doesn't change you. And look, but bottom line is, some people don't care to be great, because if everybody wanted to be great, then it would be, everybody would have the first place trophy. You know what I'm saying? But not everybody wants it. And so I know I'm kind of rambling and ranting, but a lot of things come to my mind. I will explain to kids who are struggling on calisthenics for 6 months. I'll say, listen, dude, you don't need a strength coach to get better at push ups. And then I'll say, do you know when you're going to get strong? And then they'll say something like, when I practice my calisthenics, when I eat better. I go, no, when you're so pissed off at being weak, it like it just fires you up so much that you hate weakness. That's when you'll get strong. But if you're in a safe environment, there's no threat, nobody's beating you up, you're the best athlete for that spot in football, basketball, and you don't have a tough team, nobody's pushing you, you're the big fish in a small pond. And so I saw a cool Instagram meme, like, it must have been 2-3 years ago, but I still remember it. But it said I think it said, get out there and get your ass kicked, which what they were essentially saying is, stop hanging out in your comfort zone where you're always the best and the strongest. Go seek out something where you are humbled. And that takes a humble attitude. Okay, you're the strongest guy in a little school or that small gym. Challenge yourself and go outside of that area.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, you mentioned like that inconvenience part of it, and that kind of reminded me of Westside Barbell, the guys there, and how some of them will drive 2 hours each way just so they can train there. And so I think that is a huge part of it, absolutely. And
A guy interviewed me, Anthony Oliveira. He was in New Hampshire. He moved out of New Hampshire to go live in Columbus to train in Ohio. Now he's still in Ohio. And yeah, people will get up and move. But then what's interesting is, people in your own town will say they're too busy to come to your gym, which is a 5-minute bike ride, a 2-minute walk. And so those people can never be helped because they don't really want it. They don't want to be helped themselves. They would rather train with their friends and touch their cell phones. And look, we need those people too, because that's competition. Not everybody wants to be great. And as a coach, that could make you crazy. Like, why doesn't Joe want to do this, but John does? And that's only for the athlete to internally decide who they want to become, what they want to achieve. And when I say athlete, that's any age. So when you're quote unquote older, now what are you training for? You're training for life. And so it's interesting how, I'm 45, men are around my age, plus or minus a few years, just letting themselves go because they consistently seek comfort food, comfort living, no exercise or very comfortable exercise. Oh, I only ride my bike. Why? Because you don't want to hire somebody to teach you how to strength train and build muscle, which is the ultimate fountain of youth. So it's interesting. And look, we all have toughness, they say, is very like task specific. You could be a very tough person in the weight room, but maybe in your work slash career, you're not very tough and you just punch the clock and you just show up, or you're very tough as a parent, a mother or father. You could handle all the, ups and downs of family stuff. But outside of that, you're not tough and everything is in shambles. That is really the enigma, is like, why do we see some people who could crush one thing and not another? I say just take it and apply it to everything that you do. I feel like that's actually easier, to just apply that to everything. It's
Yeah.
kind of like gives you consistency.
Right. Do you think there's a difference between mental and physical toughness?
It's very hard to separate the two. I mean, when things get hard physically, it's your mind that drives the body. I mean, you listen to any special forces soldier, um, they talk about oftentimes not being the most athletic or the most talented, but just refusing to give up. And so the mind will drive the body. And I remember as a young kid not being tough at all. But the more I experienced tough training, I just kept climbing and climbing and climbing. And so little things that I learned as a high school wrestler, I still apply it to my life today. So, for example, we had a power outage. Today's Friday, maybe it was Wednesday. The power went out for an hour, but it reminded me of the previous summer. We had a power outage for 12 days, no air conditioning. And I wasn't like, oh, I need to sleep in the air conditioned room. We set up two portable air conditioners where my wife, my daughter, and my son had two rooms. I slept downstairs on a leather couch. And trust me, it was hot on the leather couch, but I actually thrived in it because deep down I knew that being comfortable all the time is not a plus. It's not a good thing for me. So for me to, is I'm suffering in a house with no air conditioning. What about people who struggle, don't have food and don't have a roof over their head? That's a real struggle. And so that's why we need to almost fabricate our own struggles. My buddy Joe DeSena owns the company Spartan. So the Spartan race, he always, the people, when they finish a Spartan race, they talk about how it changed their life because they were able to handle life's obstacles. And the older you get, the more, you can be certain that tough times will happen in your life. And if you're not mentally prepared for them, then forget it. Your body can't do anything unless the mind is the driver.
Yep. Um, how would you tie in toughness overall with training, specifically, when you're in the weight room?
Yeah. So it depends. What is your struggle? So, a lot of people know me for coaching and working with wrestlers. So I remember looking at kind of the way any of our wrestlers would lose. So if somebody would lose at the end of a match or in overtime because they were gassing out and they were fatigued, I knew that I needed to implement some sort of conditioning circuit work, not anything too much where it would, overwork them and defeat them, but I would take them through a tough circuit, push them where they would keep their intensity at a high level, and then I would recognize that success. And I would say, you see how you crushed this 7-minute circuit and you were tough and you didn't slow down? That's all you got to do when you compete. And next time you have a tough match, you will remember that you did it here and now you could do it there. So you got to kind of give these, athletes or whoever you're working with, they have to experience a win. You have to help them identify the success that they had. If somebody is struggling with strength, can't do push-ups, can't do a pull-up, I'll kind of make a mental note and it'll be like, dude, you just did 10 push-ups. When you started here, you could do 3 push-ups. That's a 300% increase in strength. Boom, mental note for them. Whoa, I'm 300% stronger. Literally, if I could only do 1 push-up, or I've had athletes that can't do a push-up. They try to do it, they can't bend their elbows, their abs are their trunk is so weak, their whole core sags down. And then months later, they're doing 10, 15, 20. I'm like, dude, 1 push over zero is 100% stronger. Two push-ups over zero is 200% stronger. So I help them identify that victory, and that builds confidence. And confidence breeds more confidence. Success breeds more success. And this is part of the art of coaching. This is the coach's eye, being able to identify these things, share it with the person, because if they don't realize that they're getting better, they may not be able to, stick with it. And what's interesting too is, like, here I am, 45. I started training at 13, 32 years ago exactly. um, I've never stopped training, minus I remember when I finished college after I did student teaching, I took like 3 weeks off from lifting. I was just like emotionally exhausted after student teaching. And so I took time off then. The other time I took time off was I was coaching at the college level and I got extremely sick. I don't know if I had some early form of COVID. It was 2017, I think. But I look back and I'm like, I was just destroyed. I was just destroyed for like a month. And so I could never understand how a young kid could stop training for zero reason. So basically in 32 years, I've had like 2 months off of training. Yeah, here and there, I'll take a week off if we go on a vacation or something like that. But dude, I train pretty much year round. Or I
Yep.
do, not pretty much. I do train year round, period.
Yep.
So now that we've, I think, defined what toughness, mental toughness, physical toughness, all that, and tied in with training, I want to go over what steps you would take to actually develop this toughness. Like if you had an athlete who pretty much had none, or is just somebody in the general population who just isn't really all that tough, who isn't taking the training all that seriously, what would you recommend they do to then, develop this toughness?
Consistency in training is the ticket. And I'm just going to put in some headphones here because I see some of the kids are going away. Consistency in training is really everything, because just showing up every day builds that grit, builds that toughness. And so it doesn't even have to be anything long or extravagant. So, for example, if you look at the videos of when I'm training athletes, you'll see like a couple common things that we utilize: a lot of sled work, a lot of carries, different kind of farmer walks, and different variations of carries, and calisthenics. Those three things, I feel like they just force you to work. And no, they're just always tough. No matter how good you get at sleds and carries, they're always kicking your ass. No matter how good you get at push-ups and pull-ups, we could make it harder and more challenging for you. And so the way to develop it is you must keep showing up, number one. Number two, make sure you show up on the days you actually don't feel like showing up, because that's when you start overcoming those obstacles and that little internal struggle. And that's what builds small victories. That's how you get strong, both mentally and physically. So what's interesting is, oh, I didn't feel good. Oh, I was busy. Everybody who succumbs to their excuses, they will never be great. They could be good, but they will never become great because they only do it when they feel like it. And what does Jocko Willink say? He's like, today, the mind, it doesn't get a vote. You don't get to tell me, oh, I'm so tired. I had a hard day at work yesterday. No, you don't get to vote today. We're doing the work. And I use that phrase, doing one thing is 100% more than zero. So if that just means doing a set of push-ups, a set of pull-ups or squats, or just picking up a pair of kettlebells and start carrying them down your street. So I've got kettlebells at my house, and I'll do things like I got a pair of 70s and 53s. I'm like, okay, just carry the kettlebell to the street corner. I get to the street corner, and I'm like, okay, just get to that telephone pole. So I just trick myself. Okay, get to this thing, get to that thing. And then you're like, oh, damn, now I got to go all the way back with it. Okay, if you put it down, you have to do 10 push-ups. So do I always feel like training? No. Oftentimes I'm tired. My schedule for a very long time has been hectic. Even as a kid, in third grade, I had two paper routes before and after school. Since I got into strength and conditioning, I'm teaching by day, running my gym in the afternoon and evening. If or I'm coaching at a college by day, running my gym afternoon and evening. So 12, 13-hour days are normal for me. But if I announce to people that I'm tired, to be honest, Joe, nobody gives a fuck about how tired I am. That's the bottom line. It, when these athletes come in, if they are, 70% normal, I ask them, you want me to give you 70%? How about I coach you at 70%? How about you're late 30 minutes? How about I show up late 30 minutes? What do you think about me now? You think I don't care? And so I know that I got to just handle my own business with coaching, with training, with showing up, with doing the work because nobody else cares. And you got to find a way to care. And there's many ways to get people to get over the hump. But I think ultimately it comes down to them digging deep and deciding who they want to become. Do you want to be great? Do you want to get strong? This is what it takes. And you got to show up, period, end of story. If you're not showing up, can't get you better.
We at the beginning kind of mentioned how a lot of people are taking the easy way out. Convenience, they're not willing to be comfortable. In your experience with coaching over the years, have you felt in society overall that it's actually gotten a bit worse?
Yeah, people ask me this a lot, especially anybody who's coached for decades, meaning you see these changes kind of happening like, every 5 to 10 years. And so, perhaps kids were always a certain way or adults were always a certain way, but I certainly felt I attracted a different type of athlete in the early 2000s, then a different type of athlete around 2010, then another difference around 2015, now more difference. But it also depends on there's kind of these three things. And I think Dan John said it, and my buddy John Wellborn talks about it. He was saying we got three things that will like impact what kind of where an athlete will become. You have genetics, geography, and opportunity. So genetics can't do anything about. Some people are naturally strong, they're naturally gifted, they're fast. Some people are naturally tough. Geography is interesting. I follow, of course, a lot of wrestling. So I look at like the wrestlers of like Dagestan, Kazakhstan, those mountainous areas of Russia. Why are those guys tough? Because they live in like shitty shacks. Their backyards are mountains. So every day they're sprinting or climbing. If they need to get food or they need to like deliver a message, they need to, get to this mountain. They don't necessarily wrestle on wrestling match. You'll see them wrestling and practicing on grass or on sand on a beach. You'll see them lifting weights, not even in a weight room. Their weights are like scattered outside on a basketball court. And so your geography. So what would be the flip side to that? The town I live in is very nice and people are nice and everything is very comfortable. And what do I say to my kids? I go, well, nobody's ever punched you in the face. There's no bully. You're not threatened. Nobody's telling you early in the day that they will find you after school and they're going to kick your ass, or they're not waiting for you in the bathroom to jump you with three other friends. Those are all things I experienced in school. From an early age, there was always a bully in the neighborhood. There were bullies in school. There was somebody that wanted to fight you. There was, older kids that were going to steal your bike. And so I didn't do push-ups because I played soccer and wrestled. I did push-ups because I was like, damn, I'm going to get my ass kicked if I don't get strong. And when I began lifting weights the end of 8th grade, I remember that summer people started treating me differently because they saw my arms getting bigger. I remember freshman year getting my ass kicked in wrestling so bad that I started training like a madman. The next year, I had gained 20 pounds. Everybody treated me differently after gaining 20 pounds between March and September. So March, April, May, June, July, August, in 6 months, I gained 20 pounds. I don't know. So that's like almost a pound. You're almost gaining a pound a week of muscle. And my kids, there's no threat. Or, here I am at a high school. I tell the kids all the time, the football team, we could be great, but right now we're only good because we don't have a deep lineup. There's nobody going to take your spot. And so you're not threatened. And, so we've got genetics, we have geography, where it is that you live, and then opportunity. Sometimes you're you're blessed with an opportunity and a mentor or coach finds you or you find him or her and they train you and build you up. And so when my buddy John Wellborn was in high school, down the street from him was like a world renowned powerlifter who coached him and trained him and maybe did some wrong things with him, but trained him too heavy and wrapped his knees and all that. But it was the guy was down the street from him, and so he got lucky. Whereas for me, I learned the wrong way to train with all this bodybuilding pump up type crap, when if I would have been maybe mentored or caught by somebody else, that would have been an opportunity, or brought to a wrestling club and just all these things. So you have that genetics, geography, and opportunity. And so some of it involves being lucky.
Yep. Um, I think one issue we're seeing a lot of is the rise in cell phones. You mentioned this earlier, and then social media as well. And I think, like if you go into your average gym right now, you see everybody on their phone when they're doing their workout. They're not even necessarily even training, they're just doing a basic workout. And you'll see somebody there between their sets, they do their set, and then they immediately go on their phone afterwards. Then they do their next set or whatever. Or sometimes you see people using the machine while they're on their phone.
It's insane. It is.
Yeah.
So a couple of years ago when I was working over an hour away from where I lived, and then I would come home and have to either run my gym or take my daughter to tennis, which would then be like another 30 or 40 minutes each way. So it wouldn't be odd to drive over an hour each way to work, so 2.5 hours, then drive my daughter to and from tennis, 45 minutes each way. So 4 hours a day of driving. So I had to train not at my own gym. I had to find local gyms to pay for the day. And like even hardcore gyms, you'd see a guy on a lat pull down machine, then he would sit there, put his phone down and touch his phone for 5 minutes. I would go into a gym for fucking 30 minutes and I would just go through like a circuit of beating the crap out of myself. So my warm up might be something like lat pull downs, tricep push downs, cable row, back extension, 3 rounds. Then I would do box squats for sets of 5 and chest supported T-bar row for 10 reps. And I would do that for like 5 rounds. Then I would do a finisher of farmer walks, push-ups, pull-ups, dips. I would do that. And then 30 minutes, I was drenched and I would do that on my lunch break. And I'd be like, man, I just did all this work and that guy is still doing his lat pull down. Or he's on the incline bench, like you said. And when he's done, he would still lay back and touch his phone. Like they wouldn't even get up. And does that get you tough? Obviously not. But guess what? Some people don't care. And if you are the person pushing or pulling somebody to get better, it ain't going to happen. They need to be the driver themselves. And so I've actually learned as a coach to chill out a little bit more and give them the opportunity to step up. And if you don't step up, I always say it is fatal if me, the coach, is more motivated than you when I'm twice or 3 times your age and I don't have to compete anymore. You're the competitor. You're a football player. Aren't you afraid that 220-pound kid is going to destroy you? Don't you want to get bigger? And so some people are just not threatened. They don't care, or they don't care if they sit the bench. They don't care if they're not the starter on the team. And so all these things play a role into what do you want? How bad, you're train. I say this to them, train as hard as you want to win. So if you're talking, you don't want to win. If you're touching your phone, you don't want to win. If you're slacking and never going heavier, you don't want to win. And that's okay. You do whatever you want to do. But I know that anything I've ever achieved has always been on the other side of hard work. Nothing can. Anything worthy of achievement is never going to be easy. That is the bottom line truth. And some people just don't want to accept that.
Yep. Yep. I mean, so when you are doing the work and training, obviously the program itself is important. The programming for that program, is very important. But would you put the toughness, the mental toughness, in line with that importance, or maybe even more important?
They go hand in hand, and I never separate the two. I never look at training as just the physical or just the mental. They go hand in hand. You certainly can train. You could certainly train your mind without training the body. You can visualize, you know, even just reading. I remember going through a phase of reading every like military book I could find by a special forces operator, and just reading about the hell they went through really gave me a different frame of reference to what being tough was about. And it inspired me to train harder and to do more and to be more. And so I exposed myself to just learning and reading learning from other people who had done things infinitely harder than I had ever done or ever will do. And then you start realizing, damn, like I'm not that special. I'm not doing anything special. These guys are doing special stuff. And so you can train your mind. And here's the thing, how many people read now? They do this. They look at the phone and, you know, Instagram, this and that. Man, what if you just started reading, like Lone Survivor or any of these other books with special forces soldiers talking about the training they went through? You're going to get more out of that than scrolling through Instagram nonstop. And I think that's certainly a problem. People don't know what else is really capable.
Yep. Yeah, I think so. Absolutely. Um, so you mentioned a little bit about some of the books or how the Russians were in their environment, stuff like that. Do you think there's a lot of old school type things that should be brought back to that can help people develop toughness, and what those might be?
100%. The look, if you look at my gym and you look at the videos from our gym and you see some of these kind of like new age facilities, first of all, I look at it and I'm like, man, that's a shit ton of money. These massive facilities, turf, all this super high end equipment, everything is so perfect. To me, if I look at the best college weight room, they don't necessarily have the most, they're not necessarily the best college football team or the best college wrestling team or you name it. And so there's a book called The Talent Code, and they were talking about the area in, I think it's called Spartak. I think it's in Russia. That's like where the world's most um, junior national like tennis champions come from, and they train in like freezing cold weather. They don't have enough tennis balls for every tennis player, so sometimes they're just doing drills. And they're like, why do they come from there? Well, maybe genetics, geography, opportunity, great coaching, but they have a crappy facility, or a imperfect facility. Same thing with the Cuban wrestling team. They got like a little room with like a pull-up bar, a bench press with a bar, and a dip bar. It looks like something that would be in like a prison yard. And those guys have some of the best wrestlers in the world. And so yes, it's important to have great equipment, this and that. But when it's so perfect and posh, you get spoiled, And even though Rocky was a movie, there's many lessons to be applied to life. When Rocky was losing, Apollo took him back to Tough Gym. or took him to Tough Gym, and Mickey told him the worst thing that could happen to a fighter is all this nice house, nice living. You got civilized. And so, we're going to be upgrading our high school weight room here a little bit. And I'm like, man, will that spoil these kids? Because already they struggle to just put away the equipment, spoiled. If you don't respect, the little things you have, you get spoiled. And that's why comfort is the enemy.
Yep. You're mentioning not the nicest facilities and stuff. And again, it reminded me of West Side Barbell, especially like in the 90s, early 2000s. Their facility was like one of the dirtiest, nastiest places you could train. Um, but they developed some of the strongest people on the planet, or yeah,
Environment. It was the
yeah,
environment, the training partners. Dave Tate said we did 3 exercises on leg day. It was reverse hyper, box squat, glute ham raise. That's all we could do. 860 square foot, hole in the wall gym. That's all we could do. He goes, but it was the environment. And so, so we got genetics, geography, opportunity. Your geography is essentially your environment. So we've trained kids from all these different towns, and I noticed like certain towns, a lot of tough kids. Why? Probably got great coaches, tough coaches. They grow up together. That geography gives them an advantage. So
yep,
where you train is it makes a difference.
yep.
Your training partners.
Yep, absolutely. And you mentioned something looking like a prison cell. Well, a lot of people who are in prison, they don't have access to a ton of stuff, but they're getting humongously, strong themselves, and I think again, like you said, that ties into the environment that they're
They
in.
train, they train, of course, for their emotional health. It calms them down. It's a stress reliever. But guess what else they're training for? Life. Because there's always somebody in prison trying to kick your ass, trying to, be the top guy. And so they have a threat. When you don't have a threat, you get comfortable and then you get soft, physically soft, mentally soft. And that is fatal because that's a quick downward spiral. That's a slippery slope.
Is there, you mentioned a couple of them, but are there other specific books or resources that you recommend people look at to help them, learn more about this stuff?
Man, I'd have to like be staring at my bookshelves. I've given away a lot of books to Goodwill, especially this past summer. I gave away so my bookshelf was bending. Any books by Special Forces soldiers because I love when they share when they had to go through the selection process of who would get removed, who would be accepted into the program, whether it was Green Beret, Rangers, Marine Recon, Delta Force, Navy SEALs, all those guys are great. And of course, reading the books of like the military from overseas. So, the guys, Israeli military, UK, Australia, just reading about special forces soldiers. Um, my book is the Encyclopedia of Underground Strength. I share a lot of stories of athletes who succeeded and overcame obstacles and got tough and strong. And so I think that's a great book for somebody to learn the blending of training mind and body together.
Okay. I think that's mainly the questions that I had for you. If there's anything else you wanted to add, or if there's like a takeaway message that you might wanted to add here.
Yeah, I think if you don't understand the takeaway message after listening to this, then it's going to be hard for you to really get tough. I think you're if you listen to this, okay, and I don't know if you're putting this on YouTube, but if you watched it, listened to it, and you're still like, what do I do? You need to re-listen and stop complicating things. There's a kid who keeps messaging me, and I can't remember if he's from Russia or Iran, but he's in a place with a hotbed of wrestling. And he's always like, what is the best exercise to develop takedown power? What is the best for this? What is the best for that? And I'm like, the best for that is becoming a great wrestler. And stop messaging me
50 times. What's the best this? I've seen the best track and field runners, the best wrestlers, the best football players do things that don't really make sense, that don't even look good technically, but maybe they're so genetically gifted or technically on another level, and they're tough. And so stop looking for the best this, the perfect that, because there's no such thing. The most important thing is doing the work. And a lot of these experts are against that on the internet. They're like, oh, if all you're worried about is sweating and working, and like, are we afraid to sweat and work? You should be sweating and working, And so that's my message. That's my message.